Welcome to the Writer's Block podcast, where we delve into the minds of creative individuals and explore how art imitates life. In here, we write the scripts of our lives, but also our creativity, and sometimes we get blocked. But this podcast uncovers how to break through those blocks and the strategies our guests use to overcome them. In this short and inspiring episode of the Writer's Block podcast, producer Tiku, Mello and I explore more insights from Professor James Small, a prolific historian and Pan Africanist. Professor Small expands on some thoughts around our collaborative project, a small book, African Retentions and Black Mythology. He speaks wisdom around preserving cultural narratives and offers sound advice for Black boys and men who will be gathering in Barbados for the Barbershop Talk series this Sunday, August 18th, for discussions around misconceptions and mental health. Professor Small offers his hope for how the audience will interact with our short film and shares what that could mean for how people see themselves. Come check out the screening of A Small Book this Saturday at the Toronto Pan-African Film Festival at 1 p.m. inside the Nia Center for the Performing Arts, and tune in to this insightful episode. Let's get unblocked.
You're listening to the Writer's Block podcast with L.A. Wade.
First of all, thank you for spending the time with us. You've often said to us, all content is intent. And so I wanted to understand what that meant in a contemporary context of social media.
Yeah, all content has intent. People present ideas, they present information, they make statements that's content, and never think about what is the intent of what I just did. But subconsciously, there was an intent for making the statement. Subconsciously, there's an intent for taking the action. Subconsciously, there's an intent for presenting anything that you present. There's an intent behind it. But usually people don't state the intent. They just present the content. And then you end up in conflict because the receiver then begins to realize that there was an intent with that I didn't understand, that wasn't clear to me. And so it is worth trying to understand up front, what is the intent of the content? Mm-hmm. So that you're prepared to respond, because there is an intent. If I give you a box of Valentine candies, I expect a kiss. You know, if I give you a Christmas gift, I expect a gift in return. There's an intent. There's a reason why I do what I do. Right. That's intent. And what I'm doing is the content. And so while life every day, we do these content, not even thinking or helping to convey intent in advance of doing what we call content. And I think if the intent was more clear, we'd have less conflict. Mm-hmm. Have a deeper understanding of purpose for having taken an action. So that's why I try to almost overstate that all intent or content rather has intent.
Yes. And I had a lot of intention when we created the movie, A Small Book, which I'm so grateful that you blessed us with. But what we didn't touch on a little bit in that film was you made reference to the cultural, political, and spiritual contradictions that threaten our ability to see ourselves if we're from a certain, background of being disconnected from our history. So do you have any solutions on how we can come together and strategize around the approach of some of those solutions to help us see ourselves better?
Well, to really be politically, economically, and culturally focused, if you're a group, any group, it could be a group of females, could be a group of males, could be a group of Africans, could be a group of multi-ethnic people. But if you constitute yourself a group, then you have a responsibility to learn the history of the group. What is the history of the group? Because you have to get to why are we together? And what should we be doing to make us being together a better experience? And it all starts with knowing history. That's why you hear me say a lot, history erases the mystery. Because history explains to you how you got to where you got. And it allows you to begin to analyze, what do I have to do to get to where I want to be? Once I realize how I got to where I am, I need to decide, how do I do that? When I use the word economic, political, and culture, which I use in almost everything I do, because our life every day involves those three things. Economics is the wealth that you find in your ecology. If you live in the forest, your economics may be fruit, it may be berries, it may be herbs, it may be what lives in the water. If you live in an urban setting, your economics is what you derive from taxes. It's what you derive from real estate. It's what you derive from selling clothes or other dry goods to each other. So economics is the wealth you find in your ecology, wherever that ecology is. But then how do you manage that wealth so that it is productive for you in that ecology? That's what politics is. Politics is the management system of the economics that you derive from the ecology you find yourself in. And how the politics able to do that is guided by ethics and morals, which comes from what we call culture. That means tried and true behaviors, concepts, ideas, and principles that leads to harmony between elements of a group. That governs the management system, which then governs your economic system, which is what the ecology gives you for your survival.
Yeah. I think that economics is what blocks a lot of people from thinking that they can't do things. They believe, and it can be a block, but there are ways to strategize to give yourself what you need. And in relation to that, we're going to Barbados to speak to a bunch of Afro-Caribbean, African Caribbean boys and men around something called the Barbershop Talk, where they believe that barbershops hold a special place in our communities as unofficial healers. And I want to be able to share with them a message that you could provide them with. What do you want to lead them with in helping them understand the misconceptions that they may hold about themselves and how they may want to address mental health challenges within their social groupings in the Caribbean?
Well, the first thing we need to do is to take the barbershop talk out of the barbershop.
Yes, we've done that.
Into the community, into the household, into the businesses. We ended up in the barbershop because we had no other venue to be honest and open with one another. We were forced into this small venue where a group of men could sit around and be open with each other and honest with each other about some of the most basic things in life. But those things they couldn't discuss at the job. They couldn't discuss in the home. They couldn't even discuss on the ball field where they're playing soccer or they're playing basketball. But in that barbershop, they were alone. There was no female there 90% of the time. Usually the class and cast was varied, that you had multiple classes in the barbershop. So you might have a banker in the barbershop, and you may have a janitor in the barbershop. You may have a person self-employed in the barbershop, and you may have a school teacher, nurse, or doctor. But this is that place where all those classes of men, usually Black men, was restricted to barbershop, opening up to one another, where we could be free for that few hours, where we could expose ourselves in ways we could dare not expose ourselves in any other environment, and felt safe doing it. And so what we need to do is be able to be that kind of open on our job, be that kind of open in our household, be that kind of open in the arena of sports, where we expose ourselves to one another, get to know one another, get to truly feel the spirit of one another. That's what looking in the mirror is all about. That if you could do it with yourself, if you can look and address yourself in that mirror, then you can begin to see the mirror that has all these other people in it, because you're in that mirror with them too. And so what I would tell the young men in Barbados and to deal mental health, the best way to address mental health is to try and bring as much truth to the conversation as is possible. To try to do as much expose on what is the real reality you find yourself in, so that you can see what is causing the stress that is altering the behavior that we are going through on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. I want to ask you a question. If I want to say a quote and then see if we think what's going to come up for you is going to come up. When we say, "Get your hands out my pocket," what comes up for you?
Of course, the assassination of Malcolm X. That's where the quote finds itself in history. When the people who carried that out, they were a part of a conspiracy of distraction. The ones who made that statement was distracting not just Malcolm's security at that moment in history, but they were distracting the audience so that what had to be done would not be witnessed by anyone. And they were successful because most people never saw what really happened, because it all happened in a few seconds. And that distraction, so "get your hands out of my pocket," is a cliche for immense distraction away from an action of reality that's about to take place.
That is so good. I'm going to go really quickly with these questions. It's one word answer. Fiction or nonfiction for you?
Me and nonfiction, almost everything I do.
Ghana or North America?
Ghana would always be my preference. So North America is my responsibility.
Explore ancient African traditions or modern cultural movements?
Can't separate the two. One gives birth to the other. And the one
Live in a world where history is constantly rewritten, or one where it is set in stone?
Well, that's a hard question, because history is never set in stone, because it is too much activity for anybody to know. So what we call history is just aspects of history that affects the observer or affects the researcher. But for one to really know history, we'd have to live that same time sequence. So time would never move. Okay. So history, what we're calling history, is those aspects of history that we think affects us in such a way that it's useful to know and remember. But we use the 3/4, if not more, of history we never even are in touch with.
Indeed. Professor Small, do you thirst for things still? Do you have a thirst for something?
Well, every day. Every day, my thirst is to try to find a way where no matter what the situation or what the circumstances, people would turn to the path that would bring peace first before they would turn to the path that would bring conflict. And unfortunately, most people, because of the lack of practice, tend to turn, and information, I should never forget that, we tend to turn to the path of conflict before we turn to the path of peace. And it's only when conflicts become unbearable do we then look for the path of peace.
It's so true. That's so interesting. Mello and I have been reflecting on the work that we created together. And we know that this Saturday, a lot of people are going to be able to come out and hear your words and hear the wonderful work that we created together. What are your thoughts on the project, on working with us, on Mello, on myself, everything that you can think of regarding a small book?
Well, a small book started when you and I met in a restaurant in New York with your friends, and me with my friend Femi from DC, stopping to have lunch and ending up in the same space and beginning to talk. And I think small book begun there with our relationship, our friendship, and our growth. And then your meeting Mello, and then my meeting Mello, and that relationship, that friendship, and that growth and trying to come up with an idea to give a message to people. You had written, well, I think your second book by then, and you had done a number of films, trying to give this message to get people to look at themselves. Even the title of your book was to shock people to take a look. And you want them to take a look at themselves. You want to be able to examine the you. Who are you walking forth in the world?
Yeah.
And as you're on this journey, you're being affected by all the others who are on the same or similar journey. Yet we rarely learn to manage how we're being affected by the others, And many times we think that we're the cause of the other people's effect on us. And in most cases, we're not. And looking in the mirror, looking at the small book, it's fine to say to ourselves, let me get to know you as you, meaning yourself. And not the you that is reflection of all these other people's actions and activities. But let me get to know you that existed before you were touched or whispered to, talked about by anybody else. Who are you? And what is it that you want to be? And then how are you going to become that? And always remember, I use this cliche by Zora Neale Hurston, to be there, you've got to go there. But to go there, you've got to know there. So those little three ditties, to be there, you've got to go there. But to go there, you've got to know there. So to be yourself, you've got to go to yourself. That's that mirror, allowing you an opportunity to reflect on you.
Yeah.
And then the next step, the third phase, is get to know the person in the mirror. Really get to know the person in the mirror. And get rid of the fears that you have of the person in the mirror. The one thing I learned about people are afraid of themselves. They're afraid, they're afraid of what they might do, given what they know, So get to know yourself so that you can work out those things with yourself before you encounter anyone else.
Yes. Professor Small, do you get blocked? Do you ever get blocked from creating the life or creating the creativity that you want to create?
All the time, because what always blocks you is that you expect that your peers, your family, your friends, you expect that they are going to go the same way you're going to go. It's hard to see yourself just as you, because you want everybody else to come along. And then you realize that they have their own journeys, and their journeys are based on and predicated on their experiences. And their experiences is based on their ancestors' experiences, which is based on their ancestors' experiences, none of which is yours.
None.
Okay. And so that constantly thinking, walking together mean walking alike. But walking together don't mean walking alike. And that's what blocks me, because I expect, because we're walking together, we're walking alike. And we're all walking differently, yet we're still walking together. And if you can get that straight, it's okay, Mello's walking as Mello. L.A. Wade is walking with L.A. Wade, and James Small is walking as James Small, and yet we're walking together. But if I expect you to L.A. to walk like me, and I expect Mello to walk like me, then I've got conflict, and that's where the blockage comes in, and that's when the non-productiveness develops. When I realize that each of us are walking in our own peculiar way, based on our own peculiar sets of experiences in life, yet we can still be on the same path and going in the same direction, and could be of use to one another in the process. Mm-hmm. Then the blockage is out of your life.
Yeah. I mean, that's it for me. I don't want to take up lots of your time. I know you don't have it. I thank you so much for spending this time with us in the Writer's Block, because I've been trying to just recreate ways of getting people to engage in themselves, to your point. And we are afraid of ourselves. And I think that these are subtle ways that we can have conversations about who we are without it being too invasive, so that we can begin the process of discovery. And you have given me this gift by speaking life into me and into Mello. And we are so internally grateful to you. And I'm happy that we're going to get to share this movie with everybody on Saturday. And thank you for being a part of this process with us. We couldn't do it without you.
I'm wishing that everybody enjoy the small book as much as we enjoyed filming it. I remember those 2 days and the work that went into it and moving from different spaces. And it was actually joyful trying to make a presentation that would be useful to people. And I think we did. I think we accomplished that. And they'll see in the 17 minutes that that accomplishment is not only masterful, but very useful.
Amazing. Thank you for getting unblocked with us.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity again to be me, being me.
You're listening to the Writer's Block Podcast with L.A. Wade.
Hi, this is Andrea Lewis with the Writer's Block Podcast. My writing tip is write what you know. Be inspired by your real life and the people in your life, and just write the stories that you know. And that is my writer's block tip. Hopefully that you right now in your journey are unblocking all of the things and writing all of the stories. Bye.